Okay, it's officially 11:01, and I'd like to welcome you to Criminology, Law, and Justice. I'm Dr. Lisa Froman, and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Studies. I'm joined today by two other people who are going to introduce themselves briefly.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Dr. Jessica Bird. I'm a visiting assistant professor, and as you can tell from the funny accent, I'm British. I'm going to hand over to Shalonda.
Hello everyone, I'm Shalonda Lane, and I'll be the Criminology Law and Justice Advisor.
So welcome again from the three of us. You'll see that we have both a chat function and a Q&A function. The Q&A is for Q&A if you have questions. Chat is to we have people who've let us know they're glad to be here today, and thank you very much. Shalonda is going to be fielding for us the Q&A questions in real time as best she can. But I'm going to go ahead and start. So we're in an interesting time today. We know that we're at a crossroads in the field of criminal justice practice and in policies. And if people say, why would I want to be a criminal justice major? I think that's one of the most important reasons, because it can place you directly in the midst of changing the way our society operates. And that's a very important thing for our future as a country, as communities, and as neighborhoods. There are, as you can see, many other reasons to be involved, looking at the relationship between perhaps the criminal justice system and many other systems. And I would say that that's also been central to the discussion. Should we have reform where we place more money into, for example, mental health services or not? And so again, all the classes that you would take, the discussions that you would have, would place you and make you ready to engage with those very important questions. Next. So to tell you a little bit about the major, we are in the College of Liberal Arts, and we take that very much to heart. Our goal is to provide you with a tool belt that you can take into any profession or any aspect of the criminology field or criminal justice practice. And so you'll be introduced to the field, you'll be learning about theory so that you'll be able to understand why things operate as they do. You'll get a nice understanding of research methods, which means that you'll be able to read as an informed consumer what's going on in the world and evaluate it yourself. And again, you'll learn about practice. If you look at our specialized topics, you'll see they're varied, but one important way to think about that is that those are the areas that all our faculty specialize in. And so not only can you take a class in policing or ethics or surveillance and carcerality, but you'll have faculty that you can participate in their research efforts and that you can talk to about these issues. Next. So one of the most important things that you can do and hopefully will do is have an internship. Internships are so important because they allow you to apply your concepts from class to the real world, but they also help you build your resume. We've had students who've made contacts through their internships and then been able to have employment afterwards or get phenomenal letters of recommendation to get employment into other places. So I hope you'll do that, and you're able to get credit for that in the major. So it's not in addition, it's part of the major itself. Next. Lots of people say, but wait a second, I have so many interests. I don't know, do I do criminology? Do I do political science? The beauty of our major is that we're interdisciplinary, and students take double majors. As a matter of fact, a high percentage of our students are double majors. Psychology, sociology, Black studies, Latino studies, and I found out, which isn't listed here, we have up-and-coming biology science majors are quickly rising to the top as double majors. And you can also minor. So there's lots of ways to be involved. Next. Hold on, we've got our technical difficulties. Lots of things, UIC is a large university. And so people think, well, wait a second, how can I be involved? Do I just go to class or do I Zoom into class? And the reality is no. because in addition to hundreds of organizations on campus, our department has its own organizations. We have our student societies, and they are involved both in criminal justice practice and also looking at current reform and abolition efforts, which are very, very important. We have students that volunteer in justice institutions regarding, for example, prison and incarceration. We have lots of students who are Yes Apply. We want to be able to have our students, regardless of whether you've been legally involved students in the past, can participate and get an education. And of course, there's room for students to come and create their own organizations with lots of support from our faculty. Next. I'm going to turn over to Dr. Bird, who's going to talk now about all the possible career options and directions that you can go with a degree in criminology, law, and justice.
Thank you, Lisa. So criminology is sometimes referred to as a rendezvous subject because it's the place where many other subjects meet. As Dr. Froman mentioned, there are dimensions of sociology, psychology, history, politics, philosophy, biology. And one of the things that this disciplinary variety means is that there are multiple career tracks that potential career tracks that you would be skilled to do as a result of your criminology degree. Next slide, please. So the next few minutes, I want to lay out some of those possible career tracks. We've got 4 boxes here. We've sort of split the possible career tracks into practice, policy, advocacy, and research. Now, there's some overlap here, and there are certain jobs that might fall into multiple boxes. Next slide. Again, a further distinction here is between careers inside the system and outside of it. And this is a perennial debate, really, like where can one affect more change? By working within state agencies and auxiliary or adjacent agencies, or outside of the state, the large criminal justice system, in more community-based NGOs and private companies. And that is an open question. But what we find is that many people over the course of a lifetime do both. So I'm just going to talk you through a few potential jobs in each of those 4 boxes. So in terms of advocacy, working within the system, there's various kinds of roles within police departments, victim services, social work services within law enforcement, as well as witness advocates within the state's attorney's office. Outside advocacy, I mean a number of different things. You could work at community-based reform organizations, advocacy on behalf of immigrants and other marginalized populations, community-based advocacy working specifically with victims of crime, with people who've committed crimes and their family members, with people in prison, NGO court interpreters, and various kinds of crime prevention advocacy. Next slide. In terms of practice, working from the inside, there's all kinds of law enforcement roles at the city, state, and federal level. And many of our students are interested in pursuing law enforcement careers. There's also jobs in parole, probation, re-entry, and forensic science. Now, a slight caveat there. Many forensic science careers would require additional study at graduate level. So if that's something you're interested in, a criminology degree at the undergraduate level would be an excellent foundation. Practice roles working outside the system, various kinds of direct service hotlines that deal with suicide prevention, domestic violence, legal rights to different communities. You could move into law. And recently UIC have formed an alliance with the John Marshall School. So we're looking to develop our ties there. You could work as a restorative justice practitioner for community-based organizations and various kinds of monitoring roles within the court system. Next slide. In terms of policy within the system, no, I spot a spelling error there. Apologies. With a criminology degree, you could move into politics directly and become an elected legislator or staffers who work with them, various kinds of civil servants, and policy officers with different governmental agencies, so housing, education, health departments, for example. Or you could extend your gaze a bit further and work in a policy role within international governing bodies like the UN, the European Commission. From outside the system, various activist campaigning type roles that deal specifically with criminal justice policy issues. Again, policy officers within NGOs, within private companies like security firms, lobbyists, hired consultancy roles or advisory roles. Next slide. And in terms of research, so within the system, every executive department, from justice to homeland security, housing and urban development, education, all of these departments have a fairly sizable research arm. A criminology degree would certainly be helpful if that's where you wanted to go with your career. Also, auxiliary state agencies. There are research positions at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, for example, and we highlighted that because many of our students have gone on to work at that organization. From outside the system, the traditional academic pathways, these are obviously research-heavy jobs, faculty roles, research fellows, but there's also research and analyst roles at NGOs, private companies. And I've included at the bottom there on the right-hand column, the outside column, researchers and analysts within creative industries. Now, we're finding more and more, and probably many of you will have made use of this, that films, documentaries, TV programs, there are so many of them, podcasts even, that have an explicit justice focus. Now, all of those creative programming, they will have researchers who help them curate their material and deliver it to the public. Having a criminology degree would allow you to move into those kinds of industries if that's your interest. Next slide, please. Okay, so if this has whetted your appetite at all and you're interested in next steps, we've laid out here some bullet points of what you could do. The first is to visit our website, where you will find this presentation. It will be uploaded hopefully by Monday. And check it out. Have a look at the faculty profiles and have a look at the kinds of research that we're all working on and the opportunities. Obviously enroll at UIC, become a CLJ major, make the most of our internship opportunities, join faculty research projects, volunteer within your community. And then once you get nearer to graduation, you could consider graduate school potentially, take civil service exams, and continue talking with your professors and networking in order to move forward in your careers. Next slide, please. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. We now open it up to all of you for any questions. And before I do that, I'll just note that statement at the top of the slide there. This is really a statement of our intent, that we are a community committed to rigorous scholarship and dedicated to social change. We have a very diverse faculty who are here to support and help you to flourish academically and in the wider sense. So I'll open it out now to the audience for questions.
So it looks like we have a few questions here. One question is, have students from UIC gone to work within the United Nations? What were their roles, if that is known?
Let's see. We've had students that have gone to work in various places in the United Nations. So interestingly, they've gone to be part of the UN forces. and worked in various countries around the world. We also have had students who have become very interested in the International Criminal Court and have gone on to do volunteer work at the UN. And because we are so dedicated to the work that's being done there, we are increasingly making connections and committed to doing that. So I want to say that if you're interested, we are hoping that we will be able to place people as internships and support you in getting a work position. The other thing I must say, though, is that many positions in the UN require you to be bilingual. Usually it's English and French, but other languages are important and welcomed. So if you are very interested and you don't speak French yet, I advise you to take that up and also to consult their website about what other languages, if you're multilingual, will give you a leg up, so to speak, in working there.
And if I could just add something to that, there's also in one of those slides we talked about joining research, faculty research projects. We have had faculty who've worked in advisory roles. A former faculty member who's a human rights legal expert who had given evidence at various UN conventions, which involves the writing of reports and those sorts of activities. Often students are asked to help assist with the research for those sorts of things. And that's one of the reasons why it is really important to make connections with the faculty and to see if you can gain experience by assisting with some of the work that we're all doing with different bodies and organizations.
We have another question. What are some internships that UIC students can get within Chicago that are geared more towards policy?
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Jessica, and then I'll pick up because you've been working on new internship placements?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Illinois Justice Authority. We've placed many students with them, some of whom have assisted in more of a policy role. I guess the key word there is assisting. As an intern, a lot of the work you do is shadowing. So it isn't necessarily a case that you'll only be doing policy-driven or research-driven work. What tends to happen with our interns is they do, over the course of a semester, lots of different kinds of work, which is actually a real benefit. But right now we're overhauling our internship program and trying to cast the net wider, particularly around community-based organizations, as well as the more formal state agencies. So that's definitely something that we will, if you come to IC, that you'll see the benefit of many more kinds of internships available.
I've also had a couple of students who, under the Hispanic Coalition in Washington, D.C., have had internships where they have spent a semester and a year in Washington, D.C., working in a congressional office on various areas. One student worked on issues of criminal justice policy issues, and another student worked on linkages between housing and criminal justice policy issues. So our students do go far afield. Others have done internships locally with the aldermen in the city of Chicago as well, looking at policy questions.
What are some current faculty research projects?
Lisa, do you want to take
Sure.
this?
Okay, we have faculty members that are working on the role of cameras worn by police and whether they're effective or not in police behavior. So we have many looking at that. We have a couple of faculty looking at questions of what's called carcerality, which is how various issues of surveillance affect people when they leave prison, to kind of suggest that there are, that just being in prison is not really where punishment occurs, but that punishment occurs both if you've been in prison and outside of prison, but also through all other forms of the way in which surveillance is done. So perhaps you've been put on probation, perhaps you're on home monitoring, and the implications of that. We have another faculty member who's worked a lot on looking at questions of justice within educational institutions. And if you recall the idea of the school to prison pipeline, which is how punishment is conducted, of looking at that. I've done work with cameras, using visual methods to look at experiences, most recently of Native women in Chicago through violence. Did that with a dissertation student. We also have graduate students that actually hire undergraduate students, and I'm thinking mostly of Chico. Maybe you want to speak a little bit to the work that he's done as a practitioner, Jessica?
Sorry, could you say that again? The sound just went out there.
Oh, I was thinking of Chico's work as a practitioner in our PhD program, so maybe you want to talk about that linkage as well.
Right. So we have some of our students, our graduate students, have spent many years in the field in various ways, and then they come on to do graduate work. One of our students, he worked for a number of years at Cure Violence, which is a violence interrupter organization that aims to help prevent gang-related violence before it occurs, and acts as a kind of intermediary. So before the point at which law enforcement gets involved, violence interrupters are deployed to the streets to try and diffuse situations. So he's been doing that work for a long time, is about to finish his PhD, and is now acting as a consultant for 4 or 5 different cities across the country. Detroit being one of them, I think Baltimore being one of them, putting into play both his practical knowledge and his scholarly research to help these cities develop alternative strategies for dealing with violence that don't necessarily involve the full punitive force of the criminal legal system. So that's one example of how, practice and scholarship can be married.
I just recall we had another faculty member just got a grant looking at the relationship between sexual assault and sexual assault experiences and the use of drugs and alcohol. And she's been doing work for a long time and does hire people. And just as one other example, we've had a student who went on to start his own nonprofit, and then has gone on to have our undergraduates work there looking at criminal justice data. So we both are graduate students, and then as they graduate are coming back to offer opportunities as a researcher in organizations, and then faculty as well.
Right. And I'm going to plug one of our graduate students if you're entrepreneurial at all, she's managed to turn her criminological interest and scholarly knowledge into a business idea. She's created an ice cream business called Just Ice Cream, which is a social enterprise. All the profits go to various community-based abolitionist organizations. And she's just put into production her first batch of ice creams. I think one of the flavors is called Fudge the Police, which is interesting. But she's just been written up in the Tribune, and I know she's always looking for volunteers. So there's those sorts of opportunities, as well as the more formal research projects that crop up from our extremely talented graduate student community.
And of course, the last thing is, like the internship, working on research projects also counts towards the major. So it's not a side distraction. You can get credit towards the major that way.
All right, so next question says, one of the slides mentioned FBI Student Academy. Would you mind expound on what exactly this is?
Sure. This is a citizens academy, so it's not directly linked to the FBI, but it's given the blessing of the FBI. And they run a series of workshops on campus. So what happens is the students get together and decide on topics of interest. And then various FBI agents from the city's FBI bureau come in and give talks. Students also have like a social hour with members of the FBI community, so they can make contacts. They go on tours as well. And at the end of the I guess we would call it official program, as in that you are part of a series of workshops, you get a certificate saying that you've participated in that program.
Is a degree in criminology a good foundation and one planned on partaking in profiling, perhaps through the FBI, or would a degree concerned with psychology be more suited for that career path?
I'm going to plug being a double major because I think the understanding you get in psychology is very different from what you get in criminology. And really, profiling is the marrying of the two. You need to understand criminological theory, why people commit crimes, what are the motivations for crimes, what is the social environment that might lead to committing a crime. And that material you don't get in psychology. Whereas in psychology, you will get looking at individuals, but not through a criminological lens. So I think both are important. Just to say, you cannot enter the FBI right after your bachelor's degree. Nobody can. So you're going to have to go out and get experience in other agencies before they will accept you.
If I can just add to that really important point about the slightly more expanded lens that criminology would give you rather than that individualized focus that you get with psychology. We also offer classes on ethics and the philosophy of punishment, as well as more kind of critical perspectives on the point of our criminal legal system, the role of it, who it leaves out, the power dynamics that are in play. Now, if you want to pursue a career within the system, within law enforcement of various kinds, I think it's really important as a social responsibility to have those kinds of understandings, particularly around criminal justice ethics, which will help inform a more socially responsible way of conducting your professional career. And that is something you get in criminology that you wouldn't necessarily get in psychology.
And if I may, not only do you get that, but you get to have that with Professor Bird, and you have to get online to get into the class. So it's a very interesting class with wonderful examples, and not only important on a theoretical level, but also you learn a tremendous amount, and it's extremely popular.
Just to add to that, I will say seeing students that double major with criminology and psychology is very common because criminology, law, and justice isn't a huge major, and neither is psychology. There's also some overlap there between some of the classes. And so if that was something you were interested in pursuing both, you definitely would have room within your degree to pursue both and still have room to explore other classes in different interdisciplinary subjects. The next question is, what is the degree program like during COVID-19? Is it currently all in Zoom calls?
Yes, and I'm going to say, like most courses on campus, with the exception of a few labs and some theater and art programs, currently this semester, and I believe next semester, it's all going to be online. So, but we're getting better at that. And actually, I have a feeling that students don't not enjoy it,
Right.
basically because my classes are full. Every single class period, I have 100% attendance, and that's actually better than I've had, where people tend to sometimes have other things they need to do. So I think
you're right. There's also students tend to use the office hours much more.
Yes.
This is what I'm finding anecdotally. So there seems to be much more like one-on-one contacts with students, partly to kind of counterweight to the lack of face-to-face contact. So in some ways, I think you probably do get more FaceTime, individualized FaceTime with professors who are much more flexible in trying to accommodate that than you would otherwise get.
It's much easier to have a call with someone from 8 to 8:30 in the evening than it would be to go to campus for both parties to have that contact. So I think you do get more FaceTime.
What type of work does an analyst do in the creative field compared to private companies or government organizations?
So are you referring there to the kind of filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, television production? If you are, then obviously that's very different kinds of work to if you were working within a governmental executive department. your job as a research analyst for an executive department would be to gather the evidence, to do literature reviews, which would then help inform policy. If you were working in the creative industries, and I would love that job. So if anyone out there can hook me up, that would be wonderful. Your role wouldn't be so focused towards policy. It would be about helping to produce a really good, compelling, engaging, evidence-based television program or film. So it would be a very different kind of different endpoint, different goal.
If I could add to that, we had a faculty member or a visiting faculty member in social work, which actually used his degree and hired people to put together a documentary on working with people who are aging in prison and what that means. And I myself had the wonderful opportunity to work on an HBO documentary that looked at a lot of rape kits that were not processed and the implications of that. So I think there are increasingly a number of documentaries happening, podcasts, where people need those of us with research skills and understandings of policy to inform what a script might look like, for example.
So that was our last question. Unless anyone else has any more questions for us.
While people think about that, I don't, Shalonda, have you put your email into the Q&A or the chat? Because
I didn't. Let me go ahead. I'm going to provide my email in case if anyone has any academic related questions to CLJ, you can contact me and I'll provide it in the chat for you guys.
Just to expand on the role that Shalonda takes, she is the person who works with you as individuals to make sure that you go through the program in an efficient way. Helps if you want to be a double major or a major and minor to make sure that you're not redundant in any of your classes. And we work together. I work on the kind of content of the major, and we work together to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And if there's a glitch in the road, that students get over that bump without having it affect any of their move towards graduation.
Yeah, Shalonda is something like a kind of departmental Yoda.
Yes.
Because you have much more expanded knowledge of what actually happens in terms of, the department, the courses. Individual faculty members tend to be a bit useless at knowing more than what they themselves are teaching. I'm going to be real. So yeah, make good connections with the Shalondas of the world is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right. And the best way to get through is both in your first year advising and then in your academic major advising, because those that end up struggling are those that try to find their way on their own within this large institution and often end up coming back to Shalonda after the fact. So please come to UIC, join our major, and talk to Shalonda, and you will graduate in time. So thank you all so much. This will be on our website, as we said earlier. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.